Okay, so today we're gonna be showing you guys how to do the Cellona, which is like the padding that you do before you put on the bandages. So here we have all of our padding, so it comes nice and pretty like this. Once we've unraveled it, it's gonna look a little bigger and a little bulkier, that's okay. So we're gonna use basically this whole first roll just mainly on the hand and the wrist. So the beauty of the padding is that it doesn't have compression, but with that you got to remember you can't pull the padding because it's cotton, so if you pull it, it'll just rip. So, and then the other thing is it doesn't really matter what direction you start in. So when you're alternating your paddings, with your bandaging and your finger bandaging, you have to kind of alternate your direction because you're applying compression. But with the padding, since there's no compression, you can kind of start whatever direction you want. But if it helps you, you can just keep alternating and that's fine. So I like to start around the wrist. You're gonna start around the wrist. Same thing, your snail shell is gonna be on top, okay? So you have your little snail and then you have your snail shell, okay? So you're gonna start at the wrist and you're gonna anchor here, and then you're gonna start going through the thumb, making sure you don't accidentally flip that padding on the way. So making sure you keep that snail shell on top, and then you're coming back around to the wrist. Perfect. And then you're just gonna do that sequence until we get a nice shape. So the purpose of the padding is really to get the shape of the arm nice and even, kind of creating a cylinder shape, if you will, so that when we apply our bandages on top, our bandages aren't sinking into the small areas of our arm. So areas like the wrist that are tiny, areas like our elbow that kind of sink in a little bit. The padding kind of makes everything like an even playing field so that our bandages are getting the right pressure and aren't cutting off circulation in any one spot, and it's nice and creating that pressure gradient that we want. So you can see Julia, she's doing that same sequence, so around the wrist and then through the thumb. And you can kind of gauge this depending on where you think you need more padding. So, you know, if you have a bigger, you know, if you have more swelling here, yeah, you might not need as much padding on this part of the hand, but you know, you might need some more at the wrist or something like that. So it kind of takes a little bit of practice to kind of gauge it. But yeah, Julia's got a nice little pad here. So now she's just taking the rest of this and just moving it up the arm. Everyone will be a little bit different. Some people use a whole roll on their hand and their wrist, and that's perfectly fine. So she's finishing that up. That looks great. And for the padding, it doesn't, you know, we get really picky about things like wrinkles and, you know, not having those wrinkles in the finger bandages and in your short stretch bandages. But for the padding, because we're not having that compression component to it, it doesn't really matter if we have little creases and stuff like that. It doesn't need to be so perfect looking because it's not adding that compression component. Okay. So at this point, you can kind of take your stockinette and pull it back on your hand so that you have a clear stopping point for your bandages, and that should be right around your knuckles. You don't want your bandages to go past your knuckles because then it's gonna be quite a pain when you're doing your everyday activities.
Be hard for me to bend.
Right. All right, so our second one, we're gonna start basically right where we left off.
So my snail shell is in the right spot.
Yep. And we're just starting where we left off.
Yeah. It's okay if it has a little gap.
And you can have little wrinkles. It's okay. So Julia is coming up on her elbow here. So probably one more go round and she'll be right at the elbow. So at the elbow, we want to do something called an accordion, okay? So basically Julia's gonna, cover the elbow, cover that little crease at the elbow, and then she's gonna do a little double back. So she's gonna kind of roll it on itself.
I give myself that room to make that turn.
Yes, yep, give yourself some room. And then you're gonna make a full circle all the way around this time. And all this does is just pad up that crease of that elbow that kind of likes to dip in so that our bandages aren't stuck digging into that elbow section. And then she's just gonna keep rolling up towards her upper arm. And you can kind of notice Julia has this gray kind of pad underneath her, and she's kind of using it to hold the padding and then come around with the other arm. So that might be a good idea if you're, having some trouble grabbing the padding on the other side, which is pretty common when you're doing this with one hand.
Where sometimes we have patients stand next to a wall and let the wall catch it on one side.
Yeah.
So they can have a little bit of a break.
Yes.
And it's okay if the cotton kind of escapes you because it doesn't roll far.
Right. And you want to bring it all the way up to where that armpit kind of meets your trunk there, so your torso. Yep, you want it all the way up. Perfect. You want to do a third one?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I know so many of you are wondering, where do I start this third roll? So that's a good question. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna start at the bottom and you're gonna press and you're gonna feel kind of where it starts to dip. And you can kind of see it too. So right about here, I'd say right past the wrist is where we kind of have a dip in that shape. So we got a nice little shape, and then it kind of starts to dip in a little bit. So we want that whole arm to basically be like indistinguishable. You shouldn't be able to tell where the wrist is, where the elbow is, where the upper arm is. It should all be just Michelin Man style. Okay, so you're gonna start that one right where that dip in the shape is. And you're gonna go about 50% coverage of that last roll. And I should have said that from the beginning, but here we are. Good. And you're just going all the way up the arm. There's nothing to it. Making sure you're not pulling at that cotton. Good, and she's really using that surface, and you can use that wall if you need it. You should always feel like you're in control of your bandaging materials. Okay. So she's all the way up, and then she's just gonna bring any extra, kind of angle it down.
Get the tail.
So if you have a little extra, you can just kind of angle it down. Great. So the whole arm should just be kind of one nice cylindrical shape. So you shouldn't be able to tell what's where. It's all padded, and now we're ready for our bandages.